Hi everybody, welcome to Excuse Me Mr. Dad. This is our inaugural show, so let's get right to it. So today we're going to be talking about a few things. First of all, the scientific method, I've got that over here, we'll talk about that in a second. And then secondly, we're going to be talking about the environment, protecting the environment, and groundwater. So first of all, before we get to the method, the exciting scientific stuff, do any of you know about groundwater? Does anyone know that there's water under the ground right now? Like if you were to look down where you're sitting in your house, the house that you're sitting in is on ground, and under that ground, there's water. So I've got a model here. We can pretend. Here's the ground, and flowing all underneath the ground is water. Okay? So, who do you think might actually use this water right here? Take a second and think about that. All right, so I've got some models here. So first of all, plants, this happens to be a mushroom, but plants use groundwater for growing. You know, obviously, if it's a tree, you know, the roots go down into the soil and they absorb the water. You know, mushrooms are a little bit different, but for this exercise, I've got a little mini mushroom here. So we'll put the mushroom in our ground right here. All right, so who else might use groundwater? How about animals? You know, now there may not be a lot of elephants running around here where you live, but elephants and animals also live on the ground and they drink the water. You know, if there's an open body of water, a stream. And speaking of streams and open bodies of water, you know, groundwater typically will flow to streams and rivers and sometimes a lake. Like think about Shields Lake, you know, that's fed by streams and by rain. And so who else might be using that groundwater or come into contact? Anyone have a guess? Let's see, I've got a little model here. So fish, that's right. So let's put the fish in our water. Oh, look, it fell perfectly. So we've got plants, animals, fish. There's one missing. Anyone guess? Right, people. So if we put the people here, the person. So this is interesting because people, just like the animals and plants, use the groundwater for, you know, some folks have wells at their houses. Some people just, you know, drink that water. But also, some people eat plants. Some people eat animals. Some people eat fish. And so there's a food chain here, right? And so this groundwater actually interconnects this food chain that we have right here. So before we get to the actual experiment itself, let's talk a little bit about the scientific method. So that's part of what we're learning about today. I've got it written here. I'll put it there for a second and then I'll move it back here. So first and foremost, you have a question, right? So the method says, you know, as a scientist, one of the cool things about it is you get to ask questions. You know, it's you're testing things. So first you have a question, and then you're going to do research. We're going to do a little bit of that today. Then you have a hypothesis, and that's actually a lot about what this experiment is. So I have a little star here because a hypothesis is simply put as an if-then statement. So in a hypothesis, you say, if something happens, or if I do this in the experiment, then I'll expect this to happen. Or you wouldn't say you would expect. You would say, if this, then that. It's pretty simple, right? So that's what we're going to be doing today, testing our hypothesis. So back to the scientific method for a second. So we're going to be doing an experiment. And like I said a second ago, the experiment tests the hypothesis. We're going to make observations about our experiment. We'll find results and come to conclusions, and then we'll communicate it. So if you were in class, you might do an experiment or you might do research, and then you would communicate it in a paper or a poster or just tell people about it. So today we're going to do an experiment. You're going to get to see it, and then, you know, we'll have results, and I'll communicate those directly to you. So I'm going to set this here. So again, we're talking about pollution. So I think I need a little bit of pollution here. So, hey, Swimley, can I get that pollution, please? Thank you.
There we go. Bye-bye.
So, for the purposes of today's experiment, we're going to be using grape Kool-Aid. You know, and it's dangerous, it's nasty, it's something that's going to pollute our little environment here. So, you wouldn't want to drink this if you're doing this experiment at home. So, before we actually do the experiment, you should say to yourself, if we pollute the land with our pollution here, then we would expect what to happen with the groundwater. So do you think maybe it's going to filter? Will the ground filter the pollution? Will it stay on the top? There's a lot of different things. And I want each of you to take a second, maybe get a piece of paper, or just say to yourself, if we pour this pollution in, then, and that's what that's going to be your own individual hypothesis. So let me bring this a little bit closer so everybody can see it. So put this here, and then up comes the experiment, right? So again, here's our pollution. And the question becomes, if I pour this on, what do you think is going to happen? So here we go. Let's add some pollution to the soil. So far, not much is happening. Add a little bit more. You start to see a little bit of a change. So I'll continue to add this. Yeah, this is our, let's call it an oil spill. Oh, it's a little bit of overflow right there, but hopefully, let me make sure you can see it on the camera. Can you all see starting to change color down here? And so actually, in order to make this thing, you see that? So as the pollution drips through, and in this particular situation, I had to lift it up to give it a little bit of air to let it flow. Can you see what's happening there? So in this situation, we're getting overflow. So in this situation, when the pollution hits the soil, it doesn't stop. It actually continues on down into the groundwater. And then you remember what we talked about before? Let's bring this back for a second. So, move this. So, all of these organisms here are affected by the pollution. So, I'm going to do one other little experiment here. Let me move the pollution on out of here. And actually, I'm going to take off our land. I'll put it right here. I'll take our pollution and let's see, I'll put this away for another time. Oh no, it's here now. Let's see, I can put this over here. I'll put a little bit down in here. All right, so now we've got a fresh experiment. Let's pop our fish in there again. Put some water in. All right, so now, what do you think happens if it rains? So I need some rainwater. Hayden, can I get some rainwater, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So, if you look here, and I could bring it close, right now we've got fresh, clean water. So the groundwater is clean. The earth, though, is contaminated. So what do you all think is going to happen when it rains? Is there going to be any sort of effect here? Well, let's do the experiment and find out what happens. So bring this back up. This, and I'll check to make sure the view is good. It looks clear, so you can see clear water there. All right, let's make it rain. and you can really see it there. See that? So in this situation, the earth was contaminated. So let's say someone spills some oil or a chemical on the ground. Maybe it doesn't go into the groundwater right away. It sits on the surface right here. And then, as it rains, what happens? You can see the effect. I mean, think about this fish that's in there. Think about if this guy decides to eat that fish. Pretty cool, right? Let's see, so I'll let that run. It looks like it's almost done. Let's give it one more for good measure, so everybody can see really what's happening here. All right. So, not a magic trick. That's the same sand. You saw me move it around. Let's move this back down. Get this out of our way. So, how did your hypotheses go? Did you guess right on the first experiment? Did you guess on the second experiment that actually the pollution would come through into the groundwater, even though the water was clean when it's raining? So if we go back to our scientific method here, you know, all of you should have had a hypothesis, and then we ran an experiment. We observed what was happening, and then there was results, right? Then we could communicate. So the big picture result here for today's story or lesson is the importance of protecting our environment, right? So, you know, it's not only oil or chemicals, but if you throw trash on the ground and it flows into the river, I mean, that's going to affect, of course, it won't have a color change like this, but that's going to affect the fish in the water. It's going to pollute, and perhaps it will be in the water, and some of the paint and chemicals will come out into the water and it'll affect this entire food chain. So not only is protecting groundwater important, each of you can do your part by, picking up after yourself and just being smart when it comes to recycling and doing things like that. So that's about it for today. I thank you all for your patience and your time. I enjoyed being with you and look forward to seeing you again soon. See ya.